So the Gemara has three ways, when we light the menorah, the Gemara has three levels of fulfilling the mitzvah. The original mitzvah as it was instituted was to light one candle every night. Every night, one candle, you do your mitzvah, Chanukah, each family, one candle. Then there is the mahadrin, the way to do the mitzvah in a more beautiful way, and that is that you light a candle for every member of the family. Every person in the family lights a candle or one. So it's similar like the women do for Shabbos candles. They light one candle for every person in the family. And then there is the mahadrin, min mahadrin. Mahadrin, min mahadrin brings us to an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. According to Beis Shammai, we light the first night of Chanukah 8 lamps, and then the second night we decrease and we light 7, and then 6, 5, 4, so on. Until the last night of Chanukah, Zos Chanukah, we have one light lit. And Beis Hillel is of the opinion that we do the opposite. We light first night 1, second night 2, so on and so forth. We follow the custom. First of all, we do mahadrin, mina mahadrin. We do it the mitzvah in the most beautiful way possible. But being that there is an argument, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, so we follow Beis Hillel's like we do generally in all other disputes between the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. We follow Hillel's view, and that is regarding Chanukah, we light 1 and then 2. Last night, we lit 4. And so on, we will increase. So we will get to the bright lights of 8, Be'ezus Hashem and Zois Chanukah. The problem over here is, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos that every argument, kol machloikes shi l'shem shamayim, every argument that is for the sake of heaven, where people are not arguing for their own egos, but they're arguing for a higher cause, with pure motives, soifei lehiskayim, it's going to last. That means that both opinions are going to last, are going to hold. Unlike a argument, a machlokes, which is shaloi l'shem shamayim, is not for the sake of heaven, like when Korach staged an uprising against Moshe, his intentions were not pure, so whatever he stood for is gone. He was swallowed in the earth together with his whole crew that joined him, or others. And what lasted is only Moshe Emes v'Torosa Emes. We have Moshe's everlasting teachings and legacy as it continues on, but not Korach, because that's gone with the wind. But the example for a machlokes that's l'shem shamayim, that's for the pure motives, that is going to last, is the argument between Shammai and Hillel. That would mean that both opinions have to last. But in actual practice, we follow Hillel, we don't follow Shammai. So what do we do with the idea that Shammai has to last? So in Mefarshim explain, others explain that in the practical level of observance and the actual doing of the mitzvah, we only do it like Hillel. But in the spiritual plane, every mitzvah has, in addition to its practical observance, also has its psychological, spiritual idea behind it. We can observe both Shammai and Hillel's approach to life, and so on. So even though we will light the menorah physically in the Hillel way, every day increasing the lights, but spiritually, in the higher dimension, we have an approach to Chanukah in which we're concentrating like Shammai on the darkness. Shammai is Gevura, might and strength. So they have that warrior nature in them. They want to battle, confront the darkness. So on the first night of Chanukah, instead of focusing on the light, we see a lot of darkness out there. So we have to fight the darkness with a whole bunch of light. So the first day we unleash all the powers, which are all 8 powers of our neshama, all aspects to fight the darkness. When it comes to the second night of Chanukah, we've already diminished the darkness. There's less darkness, so we can kind of relax in this level and this element and only kindle 8 lamps and so on and so forth. So spiritually, we can follow Shammai, even though practically in observance we follow Hillel. Okay, an explanation, but since we always know Hamaisa hiya ikar, the main thing is action, the main thing is what happens in the material physical world, the problem is still, we do not have an observance in the literal sense like Shammai. So the Arizal, the Holy Ari, explains that there will be a time when actual observance is going to be like Beis Shammai. And when Mashiach comes, we are going to do the mitzvahs in Shammai mode. That means all halacha is going to follow the opinion of Shammai, not the opinion of Hillel. How is that going to happen? The Sanhedrin The Great Sanhedrin is going to re-examine all these issues, and then they're going to see that the halacha should be like Shammai, and then we will follow Shammai. That's a far stricter observance for those that are looking forward for Mashiach and think that we're going to relax. When Mashiach comes, we're going to have a far stricter observance, but it's not necessarily going to be difficult because we are going to be upgraded because we won't have any more Yetzer Hara, we won't have any evil inclination anymore. Hashem is going to melt the heart of stone, and we're going to get a leiv basar, a heart of flesh, and we're going to be on fire to serve God. We're going to see all the great lights that we bring into the world and the connection. Everything's going to be obvious. So we're going to have the energy and the enthusiasm to take on a far more or stricter form of observance. And we're going to be Kallah, we're going to be able to do it that which we couldn't do now. The law is going to be like Beis Shammai. So in that sense, when it says in the Mishnah that since the argument was L'Shem Shamayim, both of them are going to last, we're actually in the literal world going to follow Shammai, so Shammai is going to last. So then it would be as follows. What's going to be with Hillel after Mashiach comes? So then Hillel's halacha, Hillel's view is going to be practiced in the spiritual, and Shammai's view is going to be practiced in the literal, versus the time that we're living in right now, in which we follow Hillel in the practical, and Shammai in the more spiritual observance. That's the way it is. The Rebbe is not so satisfied with this, because the Rebbe said, how are we going to do this to Beis Hillel? Suddenly when Mashiach comes, we're going to dismiss Beis Hillel out of the practical observance, and we're going to start doing like Shammai. What's going to happen with Hillel? Especially since we know the ultimate observance of mitzvahs is going to be after Mashiach comes. That's when we're going to be able to fulfill the Torah in its full entirety, and we're going to be doing mitzvahs that way for all of eternity. We're just going to have a memory that a few thousand years ago we used to do like Hillel. That seems to be a great diminishment or a dishonoring for Hillel. That's the Rebbe's question. So in Hilchis Torah Shabal Peh, which is a kuntris that the Rebbe that was given out from a talk that the Rebbe gave Tavshin Nun Beis on Shabbos Bereishis, I think, and on Simchas Torah. I think it was a combination of a few sichos where the Rebbe addressed this, and the Rebbe says something very phenomenal. And he says like as follows. He says that, yes, when the Arizal says the law is going to be according to Shammai, that's only going to be in the first period of the Messianic age. Since one of the fundamental teachings, or one of the great novel teachings the Rebbe has regarding Mashiach, is that there are two phases in the days of Mashiach. Phase number one is when Olam Kiminhagei Noheg, the world still conducts itself in its regular conduct. It will still be a natural world with certain changes. But then there is a second stage in which the supernatural will kick in. And in that stage, we will literally be living miracles like the resurrection of the dead, which is obviously the greatest of miracles. And so on and so forth. There are many things, like the trees giving, all trees bearing fruit, even those that are not fruit trees. Well, the barren trees will give fruit. And things like that, which are all miracle. All these things are going to happen in the second stage. What is the deeper meaning of the second stage? Not just a time when there is going to be more miracles, but it represents an upgrade for creation. All of existence is going to experience an upgrade. What's the upgrade? The upgrade is when the world is completely assimilated into Elokus, into the divine, then the definitions and the limitations and the boundaries of the world will not limit anymore. Because what is the world? Today's days, we're living in a reality where the world is a world, and there is an Abish there is a God, a creator who created the world. A time will come when it will be clear, like Avram Avinu already knew the secret, Keil Olam, that the world and Hashem are totally one. And therefore the limitations are not true boundaries, they're not true limitations. And once the world identifies itself as the Abish there, then the limitations of time and space and the definitions are not going to be rigid anymore. And there is going to be, therefore, miracles. So the Rebbe says an amazing thing. At that time, in the second stage of Yemoisa Mashiach, we are going to observe the Torah in its literal sense, both like Shammai and Beis Hillel. That means both Shammai and Hillel's observance is going to be in the practical, in the literal. In other words, the Rebbe doesn't say it regarding Chanukah, but the way I understand it is when Chanukah is going to come and you are going to light the menorah, you're going to both be lighting the menorah by lighting 1 candle the first night, 2 the second night, 3 the third night, until you work your way up to the 8th night of Chanukah, and you will have lit eight lamps. And you will also be lighting the menorah 8, 7, 6. But you will not be doing it with 2 menorahs. You'll be doing it with 1 menorah and 1 kindling. So you'll be lighting both 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. But at the same time, you're going to be lighting 1, 2, 3, 4. It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense in the rules of physics of the way the world is now. But when Mashiach will come, the rules of physics will change, or rather, we will enter into the divine level where impossibilities can be, and it can be both yes and no, light and darkness, hot and cold, short and tall, soft and hard, I don't know, all the opposites, all elements that we know today as exclusive, with one is the opposite of the other. When Mashiach comes, all these things will the world will be in a different state. Fascinating. We will do halacha like Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, not only on Chanukah but in everything. The Rebbe says this in 1991. Okay, in 5772, 1991. So as I mentioned yesterday, I got very excited this year as we hit 5780, as the number 8s start hitting, and from the beginning of the year, I'm looking out and I have my sensors looking for where is 8, which 8, as I mentioned yesterday, represents the supernatural, the transcendental. 7 is nature, the finite world. 8 is what is beyond nature. So I was looking this year that something has to happen relating to the manifestation of 8 in the world. So it didn't take long. Right at the beginning of the year, Shabbos Bereishis. In Chassidus, we are very excited about Shabbos Bereishis. It's after the whole month of Tishrei. We've really absorbed all this energy, all this light, and we're coming now into implementation into the world. That's the whole idea. Shabbos Bereishis is to acclimate from that otherworldly experience of Tishrei and the Yaakov Holach Ladarkoi, taking it all into the actual regular life. So therefore, by Chassidim we say that v'mishteltzach Shabbos Bereishis as oivet gein de ganze Yor. As you set yourself on Shabbos Bereishis, this tone that is set on Shabbos Bereishis, so will continue all year long. So on Shabbos Bereishis, over here it was already Sunday, the day after Shabbos Bereishis. In Los Angeles, it was still Shabbos Bereishis, and New York, it was also still Shabbos Bereishis. And something special happened, which is Mashiach and associated with the number 8. But let me first premise. You see, amongst the Jewish people, there was Shevet Gad. Shevet Gad were called the Chalutzim. And the reason they were the Chalutzim was because they had to go in the forefront and pave the way. And then later, the Jewish people would continue as the masses. Shevet Gad, Shevet Reuven, they were the first marchers. And then there's the stragglers, Shevet Dan, who is meant to pick up everything that falls. So the Australian Jews are the Gad Yidden, because they're the first ones who pave the way for all the things. Sometimes when the actual action happens, you're already in the next day, but that's okay, because the mitzvahs that were done and the thing was what really set the tone. Then there is, and we in Los Angeles are the Dan Yidden, picking up the leftovers. We have a minyan in our shul there, Levi Yitzchak. It's, I think, the last minyan in the world. Because after us is Hawaii, but no one is davening at that time. This is already 12 o'clock noon every day. Okay, so this is the stragglers in Los Angeles that get together for this minyan. You've never saw such a wacky minyan in your life. If anybody's ever been to LA, everybody's fighting with everybody the whole time. I mean, if you submit yourself to go to that minyan, you can't complain. I always tell everybody, I'm there, I like that minyan. But it's total chaos. And I told everybody, because this is the last minyan, and we have to pick up the whatever fell down, so all the Meshigas ends up right over here at this time. But here we have the foot soldiers who walk ahead. Shabbos Bereishis, the United States of America had a military action and took out a fellow by the name of Big Daddy. All right? So, we're like, okay, they killed another Russia, another wicked guy. There's something deeper to that. In Chassidus, we learn how the world becomes a better place. Torah and mitzvahs, the world. We turn around the world today and we do see a lot of anti-Semitism. Jews are being attacked horribly in the world. Just in Crown Heights over the last 2 days, there were 2 attacks in London, here, there, in Jersey City. Horrible things. And how can we talk about and be excited about Mashiach when we see such evil and such darkness? Obviously, I have to try to make some sense. I mean, accept it just with Amunah, but something has to make sense. So, one of the biurim and explanations that we have in Chassidus is that when the world is a mixture of good and evil, tov v'ra, and the whole procedure of Torah and mitzvahs is to purify and separate the good from the bad, and when Mashiach comes, all the good is pure and the bad is separated. So the example is given is more like when you have gold, and you take gold from the ground that's mixed, it's gold, but the gold has sediments, it has schmutz in it. And you give it to a goldsmith, they put it in to heat it up, and then in that process, the schmutz comes out, the sediments come out. Once that schmutz comes out, the schmutz is much schmutzier, right? It's really dark. When it was inside the gold, you didn't notice how ugly, how dark it was. But when it comes out, it becomes really, really ugly. And if the guy who's bringing his gold that he found as he was gold panning, and he brought it to his goldsmith to fix it, he says, "You didn't fix anything. You made it much worse than when I gave it to you." So the guy says, "Patience." Once he extracts all the schmutz and it's on the surface, it doesn't take much to just take a cloth and you wipe it off because it's exposed, it's on the surface, and then you can take it off very easily. When it's embedded in the gold, you can't get it out. So right before Mashiach comes, we are going to see some ugly stuff come out. One of the ugliest things that came out in the last couple of years was this ISIS. It was so unashamed to be absolutely evil in front of the whole world in such and they filmed their atrocities, their evil, in such a clear way. It was horrible. Obviously, it represents the leftover schmutz that there is in the universe. It's concentrated. One of the interesting things about them is that they were attracting people from all over the world. We're going from all countries. From Australia, I know they went. From the United States, from Europe. People were going. It's like almost like served as a magnet of Ra, attracting. So obviously you understand that the leader of it and that whole thing was a leftover satanic element in this world. The fact that at the beginning of the year 5780 on Shabbos Bereshis, its leader was killed, and in a sense the whole thing was broken. That's not just a story of one wicked person being eliminated. It's a story of the elimination of evil from the world. It's a blow. It's death to the Satan. That's what it is. What caught my attention was that it happened on Shabbos Bereshis 5780, and it was done by 8 helicopters that took off from an undisclosed location. Just happened to be 8 helicopters. Well, the other story that just happened that was just exciting, just last week, let me read to you a little WhatsApp message I got from a fellow who works in my offices that I have in my shul. I have a few offices, someone works there. And he sent me this on December 10th, okay? He says, when UK election falls out on the 14th of Kislev, you already know who's going to win, okay? So this is a few days before the election. So he tells me, pay attention, it's taking place on the 14th of Kislev, the Rebbe's anniversary, right? Okay, I said, yeah, it's going to be good news, okay? So when we see the anti-Semites were devastated with a humiliating devastation, a humiliating loss. It wasn't just a regular loss. And it was so, I don't know what was expected, but not something like this. It was just totally beyond. So I'm looking, how many seats do the Conservative Party, what's their majority? The Conservative Party has 80 seats majority since 1979. No party ever had such a majority. 80 seats, 5780, 8s. Elokus is real, no more in the abstract. It's manifesting mamish in front of our eyes, wherever we're looking, where we can see it's in full manifestation, full revelation. So one of the other things that took place, which caught my attention, was that Google announced that they have achieved quantum supremacy. Now, I am not a physicist, and I am neither a person that has any knowledge of technology, other than that my phone works and I know how to send a WhatsApp and so on and so forth. I don't claim to have much knowledge in this area whatsoever. But this quantum supremacy, Google announcing it right in the beginning of 5780, caught my attention, and I looked up quantum computers for dummies to explain it to me. And this is what I got. Okay, this is what I got. So they've been working on creating this computer, working on a quantum system. And for a long time. There is a machloikis now, a big argument amongst the big tech giants, if Google really achieved this, if this is for real or it's not. But Google announced that they did a test. What was their test? They gave it a what is it called? A problem for it to resolve, for the computer to resolve on this new computing system. And a problem that would take the fastest computer in the world, the supercomputer in the world, any other computer other than this quantum system. The fastest computer, I don't know where it is, in the Pentagon, somewhere in Silicon Valley. I don't know, maybe the Israelis have it. I don't know who it is, but the fastest computer in the world, it would take it, this problem to resolve it, this calculation, it would take it nothing less than 10,000 years. Okay? It's hard for us to wrap our mind that length of time. 10,000 years. You ever try to put something into your maps and maps is thinking or other, trying to figure out your best route, and right? It's turning, and you're getting frustrated. Usually it takes more than 12 seconds and we're already going crazy. Okay, we're not talking 12 seconds, a day, a week. Imagine coming back in 6 months, a year, 10,000 years later, it finally figured out. The fastest computer, the most advanced computer, 10,000 years. How long did it take on this quantum new computer? They have it in Santa Barbara. How long did it take? 200 seconds. That is, right, that's 3 minutes and 20 seconds in which it resolved this thing that would take another computer 10,000 years. Now, how far is this from actually becoming part of our technology? 10 years, maybe 15 years, I'm not exactly sure, but this was done this year. And what's the science behind it? Again, I'm illiterate in this, but I watched this thing for dummies, and it explained something to me. Computers are built on, I think they call it bits or bytes. What is it called? Bytes. Okay. And the bytes are either a system of 1 or 0. That's what? Huh? That's bits. Okay, so it wasn't the bytes. I thought so. So it's either 1 or 0. The chiddush of the quantum computer is that these bits can both be 1 and 0 at the same time. Okay? Once they have these bits at 1 and 0, it opens up the ability of so many variations of calculations that are like exponentially faster than anything they could have ever worked with this system. So his mashal that he gave is, if I throw a coin into the air, it can land either heads or it can land on tails, right? One of the two. But while it's still in the air, it's neither heads or tails, or we can say it's both heads and tails because it's the potential for being both at the same time. So accessing, and so there is this idea in quantum physics that things behave on the quantum level in a very strange way, where they're called a superposition, where they can be both here and there, and yes and no, and all these impossibilities on the quantum level. So this quantum research has been going on, I don't know who's the innovator of it, but I think 60, 70 years already that they're dealing with this research. But all of that is, again, theoretical. The idea that they can actually tap into that power and harness it down to reality, to life, to actual resolving our problems, that happened at 5780 this year. Now, to me, it looks like, maybe I'm totally misreading this, but to me, this looks like tapping into existence before it exists, touching on pre-existence, seeing things on the level of ayin when it's not yet a yesh. Yesh, once something is a yesh, it's fixed. Ayin is still on that divine level where things are still before it becomes something. Whether this is mamish that, or this is just a revelation or a manifestation in the physical world, I'm not exactly sure, because I don't know enough of the science behind it, and probably not the chassidus behind it, to be able to figure it out. But this is what it looks like to me, and it's something that is astounding. And what is this? This is the significance of number 8, because 8 means tapping the dimensions that are not yet fixed in time and space, not yet defined with the definitions of number 7. 7 is the world as we know it. I mentioned it yesterday. 7 is time and space, is built on a system of 7. It's related to Hashem's channeling of the energy of the world through a system of 7 spheros, 7 emotional attributes, which are the building blocks of creation. But the 8, which is the level of the mochin, that is already beyond creation. So the power of Elokus that's higher than the world, number 8. So we see, interesting. First, let's take a look at number 7. Yesterday I mentioned 7 is time and space. But we look into all other aspects of the world, it's also built with 7. We have 7 musical notes. We have 7 colors of the rainbow. We have 7 nations living in the land of Israel according, right, the Torah, which is the root of 70 nations, 7 continents. I think the concept of 7 seas, 7 planets in Torah, 7 Shiva Koich Veleches. Everything is set up in a system of 7. And 8 is when we're introducing the supernatural and the infinite. So I mentioned yesterday that every time there is a window in which godliness is coming into the world, and it's not filtered by the filters of time and space, but Elokus is coming to the world as is, without its limitations, the window is always the number 8. So let's take a look at how that plays out in history. So for example, when we went out of Egypt, the year we went out of Mitzrayim, we went out in the year 2448. Okay? What was the next event? And how did we respond when we went out of Mitzrayim? What was our first response as a Jewish people? We sang Shira, we sang a song. And that song was opened up by a very powerful word, Oz. Oz Yashir Moshe. Then Moshe sang. And the word Oz is number 8. Aleph and Zayin. 1 and 7. That's the word Oz. And that's our first experience as Jews. Yesterday we mentioned that we have our Bris Milah, the first Jew, Yitzchak. And we'll talk about Yitzchak, fascinating, this whole, but that will be next week. But Yitzchak related, his Bris Milah is on the 8th day. All Jewish babies have the Jewish boys have their connection to the Eibishter on number 8. But we as a people, the first word of our song is Oz, because we're responding to that which is transcendental. Oz Yashir Moshe. And later we sing again, Oz Yashir Yisrael. Then the Jewish people sang again Oz. Now, but right when we went out of Mitzrayim, what's the next amazing event? It's the giving of the Torah. What did we do in order to receive the Torah? We had a 7-week program. 7 weeks of preparation, 49 days. Right? And then what happens? On the 50th day. What's the 50th day? 50th day is Shavuos. That's the beginning of the 8th. That's the 50th is already outside of 7. 7 times 7 is 49. So the 50th is the transcendental. So what happens then? Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God. So in the 8th is that window for Elokus to reveal itself that's higher than the world. And then let's continue. And then they're giving the Shekhinah coming down. The next great event was facilitating the Shekhinah in this world. There too as well, there were 7 days, Shivas Yemei HaMaluyim, 7 days in which we practiced, 7 days in which we built the Mishkan, took it down, built the Mishkan, took it down. And then, Vayhi Bayoim HaShmini, it was on the 8th day that the Shekhinah came down to rest amongst the Jewish people. So now let's go to modern history. And let's take a look where number 8 is being seen as we're already preparing for Mashiach. So we know that we are now in the 6th millennium. Okay, we're in the year 5,780. So we're between the year 5,000 and 6,000. So excuse me that we're not in the 8th, Baruch Hashem, because the Golus is not going to end in the 8th millennium. It's the Eibishter set this world as a world of 7 days, and then Shabbos of time, and Moshiach is scheduled to come on Friday of history, on the 6th day. Okay, not to get confused with 6 and 8 and why number 6, but let's not discuss that now. So on Friday of time in the 6th millennium is when we are expecting Mashiach's arrival. And last time I was here, I discussed the various different things that happen on Friday of time with the Holy Ari and the Baal Shem Tov and Chatzois midday when the Rebbe said Higias Mangul Laschem when we reached Friday midday, but that's not the subject for now. In Friday itself, when we hit the year 5,000, we had 7 centuries. 7 centuries. And then we come to the 8th century. We are now in the 8th century of the 6th millennium, because we're now, once it became 5,701, we entered into the 8th century. What happened then? That corresponds to the year 1941. 1940 is the conclusion of the previous century. 1941 is when we enter into the beginning of the 7th century. So let's take a look at what was happening in the world during that time. Obviously in 1940 is when we had the darkest moment in history, the Holocaust. Now, on the Holocaust we're silent. We know nothing and we can't say. But one thing we cannot not say is that we can't say that the darkest moment of time wasn't in some way connected to the brightest moment of time. Just like Tisha B'Av, Jews always know it's the darkest day, but also it's the birth of Mashiach. So what our minds will never know. Mashiach will answer, Hashem will answer when Mashiach will come. But it's interesting that right at that moment, Tafshin 1940, that's when the Jews people hit rock bottom in terms of the darkest, most horrific time in history. But what happened immediately after that? The great rebirth of the Jewish people and the aliyah that Jews went to Eretz Yisrael. Now obviously it didn't start then, it started earlier, and the Rebbe very much opposed the idea that the establishment of the state of Israel is Hischalta de Geula, the beginning of redemption. So it's not the actual redemption. The Rebbe would tell us constantly that even after that, we're living in a time of choshech, kaful, mechupel, darkness and shebe darkness and so on and so forth. But it doesn't mean that it's not a preparatory state for the Geula. When Mashiach comes and all Jews are going to live in Eretz Yisrael, we do need plumbing, we do need roads, we do need electricity, and all these things were developed when the country was built, and therefore it enables after that, when Mashiach will come, the shleimus of Kibbutz Goliath and all the Yidden living in Eretz Yisrael. So this is at the beginning of 5700. After that, we find the Eibishter has shown the Jewish people miracles that we haven't seen since the days of Yeshua ben Nun, since the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. As the Rebbe himself says regarding the 6-day war, Chasav Havaya Ezroya Kochoy. The Eibishter has extended his hand, has revealed himself in the world, such a spectacular military defeat and the victory that Yidden had during the 6-day war, li'einei kol basar, to the eyes of the entire world, to see clearly how the Eibishter loves his children, and he does unbelievable nisim for them. And again, we haven't seen this. 2,000 years of Hester Panim, 2,000 years of darkness, 2,000 years of concealment. But in this last century, it wasn't only that war, but primarily that war, but all the other wars as well. The Yom Kippur War, also big miracles. All of them. The miracles, it's Geula. It's Geula diga miracles in the sense that the Eibishter is again being Mizgala, revealing himself to the Jewish people. So much so that, I don't know where I read this, in the West Point Academy, they were studying various different strategies of war, strategies of, they were looking at different battles, and the instructor was showing the various different. And there was a Jewish boy over there, and he asked the instructor, "How come you're not using as a model the 6-day war and how the Israelis defeated all those Arab countries around them?" And the instructor said, "Listen here, we are purposely omit that because that has no explanation in military strategy, planning, and so on and so forth. We recognize clearly that was the hand of God, and that has nothing to do with any type of chachma, and so on and so forth. That was just beyond." So there you see, the Rebbe then said that this is the Tkab Shofar Gadol, that the Eibishter is blowing, and he's building it on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Amayma, where the Frierdiker Rebbe was saying that there is going to be the Holach Pesaris Teman, and the two psukim that we say Rosh Hashanah during davening, speaking about the great Yitaka B'Shofar Gadol, which is going to be an awakening. The Rebbe then wanted, and not only wanted, but actually used the miracles to inspire Miftzah Tefillin, and to both Miftzah Tefillin to bring about the defeat, but then to cash in on the awakening that the Jewish people so identified with that miracle. They saw it, and the Rebbe then said that we should have, we could have and should have cashed in it much more than we did. It's a shame that it hasn't. But in any ways, this is spectacular. That's more Bechitzanius. Bepnimius, what happened in 1940, 1941, on a much deeper inner level. In 1940, the Frierdiker Rebbe came from Europe and he moved to America. In other words, the center of Chabad, which is the center, the channel of Messianic light coming to the world, the center of Pnimius HaTorah, the revelation of the inner light of the Torah, which is what Moshiach is all about, which has been developed and building for 5.5 generations or 6 generations back in Europe, moved to what the Rebbe refers to as Chatzi Kader Hatachton. It moved to the lower hemisphere, moved to the United States, set up shop in 770. That happened in 1940, which is still Erev. It's still the year before the beginning of the 8th century. In 1941 is when our Rebbe arrives to the shores of the United States of America. In Tafshin Aleph, when the Rebbe comes to America, that was a game changer. The Rebbe then begins laying the framework later for his Nesias. The Frierdiker Rebbe appoints him head of Machne Yisrael, charge of all of this Hafatza and transformation of the world. The Rebbe himself says in the Chavches Sivan Sicha, amazing Sicha, where the Rebbe explains, and in other Sichas, how the work of spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit and Hafatzas HaMayanis was sort of contained while the center was in Europe. But once it came to the lowest point in the world, the darkest, dafka when we hit rock bottom, from the lowest point comes the Ufaratzta, Maparatzta Lecha Peretz, comes that powerful energy that breaks all the boundaries and spreads light across the entire world, all happening within the 8th century, 1941. And then, of course, a few years later, the Rebbe becomes a Rebbe. And so these are amazing things related to the 8th century. But within this 8th century itself, you had 7 decades until you hit the year 5771. 7 decades. And then 9 years ago, in the year 5771, we entered into the 8th decade within the 7th century. So we saw, in a sense, The Rebbe says that Shleimus Tikkun HaOlam, the completion of the Tikkun of the world, since the world is a world of 7, so the Shleimus of purifying the world is when the number 7s are full and complete. And the Rebbe said that's why 770, which is the Shleimus of the Tikkun of the whole world, is the center from where the whole world is fixed. That's all related. And the Rebbe says 770 is Gematria Ufaratsta, Paratsta, Tsarfas, France, so forth. Paratsta, breaking all boundaries. Elokus has no barriers from the Shleimus of 7. So an interesting thing happened in the year 5770. Time itself became 770. The time became 770. So you saw in the last decade the beginnings of the shlita, of the dominion of Moshiach in the world. And especially in the second half of this decade, as we reached, as I mentioned yesterday, 5777, the shinuyim that are happening, which are so unbelievable, so impossible, yet it's completely lamayla min hateva, it's completely, you can see that it's miracles, but yet it's completely working within the system. It's beyond the system, but working within the system. It comes about through elections. But impossible results that don't make any sense. And leaders that for no reason that we can explain are standing shoulder to shoulder with the Jewish people. A lot of this was going to talk about Bez Hashem on Sunday and Monday. So this is all related to the energies of number 8. 7 as it is permeated with number 8. This year, 5780, we're peaking at 8. In other words, 8 in its shleimus, 8 at its highest point. Someone I mentioned yesterday, I was trying to connect how Chanukah is a combination of 7 and 8, and I lost the obvious. Someone mentioned, more than one person over here in the audience told me, well, the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash had seven branches, but yet it burns for 8 days. So in the menorah itself, you have the 7 and the 8. So 2 years ago in 5778, 5778, when on the 8th day of Chanukah, on the year 5778, Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin was released also miraculously from prison, and after he sat for 8 years, on the 8th day of Chanukah, in the year 5778, and what's the secret of number 8? It's an aleph riding on 7. That means the divine energy that transcends the world is not dismissing the world, is working within the world. The one permeates the 7. The two of them become completely unified. That's the whole idea of the Jewish people. Oz, Aleph and Zion, bringing it together. So the interesting thing is that release of Shalom Mordechai came through an organization, also a Chabad organization called Aleph. Isn't that interesting? Aleph, on the 8th day of Chanukah, number 8. Now, for a moment, what's the secret of number 8? What is the secret of this Aleph and Zion? So in Chassidus, there is a few nekudas regarding this idea of Uz. Number one, it represents, as I mentioned earlier, the godly that's beyond creation. That's hinted to in the word itself. Uz means then. Then when? So it has two meanings in which we say then. It means prior to existence. For example, the pasuk is Nachain kisacha me'oz. Your throne, Hashem, is nachain, is prepared me'oz, from then. What does that mean? That the kisei hakavod is from before creation. Mikedem, from before the world. So there, oz means before creation. In other words, a dimension that's before, prior to the definitions, what we call in Chassidus, Seder Hishtalshalus, the order of evolving levels, which are all part of the system. This is pre-system. And that's the word uz, means kedem. I think the Targum says mikadmas dina, which was before. That's uz. But, as mentioned earlier, it's not just above that which is transcendent. It's an aleph and a zion. In other words, in the word uz itself, you can see the combination. That the aleph, which is the transcendental truth of the divine, is permeating the 7, which means that Hishtalshalus, the whole system, is attached and one with the power of Hashem that's beyond the system. For that reason, Oz is not just referring to the past, but Oz is also referring to the days of Mashiach. As Chazal say, when it says Oz Yashir Moshe, then Moshe, it says Yashir will sing. So it's referring to Tchias HaMeisim, to the resurrection of the dead, when Moshe Rabbeinu will sing with us again when Mashiach will come. We take a look and we find that there are so many prophecies relating to the future, and they're all introduced with the word Oz. Let's take a look. We have the pasuk, Oz yibaka kashacher nahorech. Then your orech, your light will then yibaka. Then yibaka will blast open kashachar like the morning, orech your light. Oz yimale schoik pinu. Then our mouths will be filled with laughter. Ulshainenu rina on our tongues with song. Oz tismach besula b'mochel. Then the girl, which is referring to Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, will rejoice b'mochel in a dance. And a dance is a circle which represents the infinite, or the symbol for the infinite, by the way, is an 8, lying down. Oz tismach besula. Then the girl will dance b'mochel in a dance, which means Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, will experience the Ein Sof. That's number 8. Oz ehapich el ha'amim safa berura. Then I will convert the nations into a unified tongue. Are we not seeing already now the conversion of powerful governments, converting and flipping over one after another? Oz ehapich el ha'amim. Oz tisaneg al Hashem. Then you will delight in godliness. And I probably missed a few. But so many of the prophecies of the future are all related to this word Oz. It's all connected to this. Why? Because the Rebbe says 2 things. Number 1, Oz represents, as I said earlier, godliness that utterly transcends the world. That will ultimately only be revealed when Mashiach will come. That's one reason why Oz is referring to the days of Mashiach, because we're dealing with a lukus that's completely beyond the world. The other idea is that very transcendental godliness is going to be accessible and part of everyday life. It's going to be part of the natural. It's going to be connected. You're going to be able to connect to it within the 7, from within time and space, not by being otherworldly, but within the world itself. That chibur, that attachment of Elokus and the world in absolute harmony and unity, that's only going to be when Mashiach comes. And that's the reason why Oz is related to the future. Now another idea. In Chassidus it says that Oz is 8. 8 is the chibur of the 2 names of Hashem. There's Yud Kei Vav Kei has 4 letters. Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? 4 letters. The other name of Hashem is Aleph Dalid Nun Yud. Adoi. So we know, the Chassidus explains, Aleph Dalid Nun Yud represents the dimension of 7, the world. Adon, what is Aleph Dalid Nun Yud? That God is a master of the universe. So it's related to God as He is a source of creation. That's Adon. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the transcendental Elokus that's higher than the world, because Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hoyeh, Hoyve V'yeh, past, present, and future. And we know that the whole purpose of Torah and mitzvahs is to unify, to join together Havaya and Adonah, to bridge together these 2 and unify them, bring them together in harmony. And that's the yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu u'shechinte, the masculine aspect of the divine. The Shechina is the feminine aspect. That's what all of our Yiddishkeit from day 1 has always been, to this marriage, to this fusion. And that's in number 8, because in number 8 is the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the 4 letters of Aleph Daled Nun Yud, unifying together. And this is expressed primarily in one pasuk using the word Oz. The pasuk says, Oz yiranenu kol atzei hayar. Then they will sing all the trees of the forest. The Gemara, the Medrash says, when are we talking about that the trees of the forest are going to sing? The Medrash says that this is referring to when Mashiach will, during the time when the Mishkan was built, when they took the crushim, the beams, and they put them into the sockets. When they built the Mishkan, there were these sockets, silver sockets, and in these silver sockets they put these beams. And that was establishing the Mishkan. So the trees were singing, because finally the trees were able to serve God the way they're supposed to. They were now made into a Mishkan. Hashem came to dwell in them. But what's the deeper meaning of the Oz Yiranenu Kalatzei Ayor when you put them into the sockets? The sockets are called in Hebrew, and what do you call them? Adonim. Adonim is Aleph Daled Nun Yud. That's the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud. That's the godliness of creation, Adon. The trees represent Yud Kei Vav Kei. The putting the sockets into the trees putting the trees into the sockets, which means grounding God in this world. Dira betachtoinem, yichud, havaya, and adna. This is what is, and the yichud of havaya and adna, when you connect the two together, what do you get? 91, right? 65, and adna is 65, Yud Kei Vav Kei is 26, 91. This year, Yudalid Kislev is 91 years of the Rebbe's Chasana, which if we talk about the people who represent all the Jewish people, it's the Yichud of Avaya and Ada, and it's 91, which 90 Bechlal is the number associated a lot with the Geula, but 91 is this Yichud, and that's why amazing things could be related. This stunning victory in England of 80 seats happened on that day, and on the day before that, unbelievable things, but we'll leave that Bez Hashem for Sunday, Monday. On Yud Gimel Sivan, what happened with the new executive order that was handed down that the Jewish people suddenly are a nation. This is like wild stuff, what's going on. It's incredible. But I do want to conclude with one more idea with us, and with this we're done for today. And that is as follows. The pasuk I mentioned earlier, one of psukim relating to the Geula is Az ahapach el ha'amim. Then I'm going to convert the nations. So it's related to the Aleph and the Zayin. So one of the explanations in Chassidus that is given is that we're talking about, what does this mean? The 1 and the 7, which is related to the conversion of the nations. So it says like this. In Chassidus it explains that the darkness that's in the world is associated to the 7 kings of Tohu. That are the 7 ancient kings of Edom, the 7 kings of Esau. In Chassidus, we learn that the world is dark because there are shattered, the sparks of holiness that are everywhere, that are contained within the Klippa. How do you get Klippa? If Hashem is the source of everything, how do we end up with a world of Klippa? So as Kabbalah explains, Chassidus elaborates on it, there is a shattering of the kalim, of the vessels, of the world of Tohu, and that creates this mess, and our job is to rectify the world, applying Torah and mitzvahs, which is the idea of tikkun, to fix the broken world of Tohu. Now this whole idea of shattering vessels of the world of Tohu is related to 7 kings that are mentioned in the end of Parshas Vayishlach, which are 7 kings, and by each one of them it says he reigned and he died. He reigned and he died. He was king and he died. So the Arizal says that in that description, it's discussing the 7 midot of the world of Tohu that collapsed. Then comes the 8th king. By the 8th king, it says that his name is Hadar, and this king doesn't mention that he died, and by him it mentions that he's married, and his wife's name is Mahatabel, and so on and so forth, whatever. So Chassidus explains that the 8th king, that's the root and the shoresh of the world of Tikkun. From number 8 is when you start the Tikkun in the shattered vessels of the world of Tohu. And it's related to this 8th king, who, by the way, in Chassidus it says that this is the shoresh of Yosef HaTzadik's neshama. That's why Yosef was so handsome, because his rooted neshama is in Hadar. Hadar means splendor and beauty. So Yosef is rooted in that place, and that's why Yosef is the one who goes down amongst the nations, the first Jew who's actually hands-on fixing the nations. because he's related to this tikkun that has to happen in the 8th king. So here's an amazing idea. We'll conclude with this. So that's a third concept related to the Aleph and the Zion. It's the one, the infinite light merging with the 7. It's 2 levels of Elokus converging together, Havaya and Adna, Soviv Kalalman and Mamalo Kalalman. And finally, it's the 8th dimension that fixes the 7 broken vessels of tohu. So someone brought to my attention an interesting idea. If you take a look at the story where it says the 7 kings who died, it says, Ve'ela HaMalachim, these are the kings who reigned in the world of Edom, Lifnei Melach Melech Libnei Yisrael, before the Jewish people even appointed one king. Physically, it means that in the land of Edom, Esav produced 8 kings before the Jewish people even had their one king. So he asked the question, why does it say Lifnei Melach Melech, which is in the singular? It should say Lifnei Melach Melachim, before they reigned kings. Before the Jews had kings, because we didn't have only one king, we had many kings. So his idea, which I thought was really interesting, he says, no, this is not referring to the king's den, it's referring to the ultimate Melech, Melech HaMoshiach. Lefnei Melech Melech. Before the ultimate king, Melech HaMoshiach, will reveal himself, there will be 8 kings, and the 8th one will rectify. The source of rectification. And where are they kings? In the land of Edom. So Edom we know is Rome, later the entire Christian West. But one of the worst manifestations of Edom, in its full brutality, and its full power, and its full animosity towards Judaism, towards Torah, was the Soviet Union. And they were ruling for 70 years. 70 years of darkness before the great light. And what were their rulers? Well, I would never know this, but let's do here, 1 second, I got this over here. Who was our first ruler in the Soviet Union, of Edom taking? Lenin, Stalin, Malenkov, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko, and finally the 8th one, Gorbachev. Yeltsin's ready afterwards. It's no more the Soviet Union. Gorbachev was the one who's number 8, and that was when? Right, 1989, right before 1990, before the Rebbe started Higiyah Zman Gulaschem, and we started seeing the lights of Mashiach fully manifesting and shining. Lifnei Melach Melech Libnei Yisrael. Finally, there's the 8th Ozahapach, and that conversion and that transformation happened then, and it's continuing in other places. We're seeing unbelievable revelation, unbelievable lights, but this year is the eye of the storm. Here is where the 8s are in its most intense form. Be'ezus Hashem, the idea of Azahapech, hopefully we'll continue these shiurim in Yerushalayim, we don't have to talk about it. Be'ezus Hashem, Sunday, Monday, we will discuss this further.